Got Josh again.
And Sam.
And this is Loving in the Dark. So, as we mentioned in our trailer, if you've seen it, I hope you've seen it.
You better seen it. Better. If you haven't, go back and watch it.
Yeah, basically, we're going to be going over our journey, telling our story about our life, eventually getting to the point of where we went through some things with separation, divorce. There was some remarriage in there. But, in order for you to understand where we're going, where we are, you got to know where we came from. So, we figured we'd take this first official video to talk about us, kind of. Episode one. Kind of how we met, a little bit about our backgrounds, things like that. Some of you know us, some of you don't. But either way, we'll treat this the same and just kind of keep it open, keep it light, keep it informal. So, kind of start off with, I guess, a little about me. So I grew up as a preacher's kid. I grew up in the church. Basically, I was one of those kids that, you go into church almost every day of the week, kind of the cliche stereotypes of, Sunday service and Sunday night service, and Monday something going on, and Tuesday night prayer, and Wednesday midweek service, and you might have something going on Thursday, whether you're preparing for the service on Sunday or not. Then Friday you got something going on with the youth to make us feel included. Then Saturday you can potentially get a day off, but pretty much going to church, all the time. And
the epitome of you are the church.
Yeah, literally.
You were the church.
I was the church. I was the church. But seriously, growing up with that, it helped to place the seeds in my life, which established my relationship with God and helped me learn the importance of God, just overall in my life. And, I was never a perfect person by any means at any point in my life, but it helped to keep me rooted, as I started to live my life and go through things in high school and college, and it, helped bring things full circle, which ultimately kind of helped me paint the picture of how I wanted my relationship with my parents. And, my parents were married for, I think, about 22 years before they got divorced. And that for me was kind of something where I was like, I got to make this a goal in my life to never experience that with my family. I never want to put my family through that. I never want to put my kids through that. And I kind of lived my life based on that aspect. And, every relationship that I had, I kind of treated it with the aspect of, can I see this being a marriage? Can I not? I probably got clown when I was younger, I know, because I'm talking like when I was like elementary school, middle school, when it really didn't matter. And I'm seriously like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work for marriage. So
at 12 years old.
12 years old, I'm like writing contracts stuff. Nah, but I took everything seriously because I truly believe that, the courtship, is for marriage, the end result for marriage. If that's not the point for me, I feel like it's a waste of time. Some people, they love the chase and the hunt for their entire life. And if that's you, then that's cool. But for me, that's not how I've ever viewed relationships. And that's a little bit about it.
So that's where we are definitely alike. And growing up, we both were rooted in the church. We did not go to church as much as they went to church, but we did go to church. And we did go to church a lot. So just knowing that we shared that likeness, that we knew who God was, and we were taught from an early age how important marriage was, how important it was, from a biblical standpoint, and how important it was for us to kind of put our own spin on what we wanted it to look like for us and our family. I knew at a young age that I wanted to be married. I don't really think that there's many women out there that just goes around, as teenagers or even young adults saying, I don't want to be married, especially if they haven't experienced a whole lot of different relationships. They don't really have anything to base it off of. So, they typically will start with the fairy tale picture and use that as their reasons for wanting to be married. So when it comes to, our background, we share that similar aspect of knowing who God was and what marriage meant to God first. Now, of course, he mentioned, his parents had gotten divorced. I think we both experienced watching marriages, whether it was our own parents or just people that we knew, different relationships that we saw, whether it was either on TV or, in personal lives. We were able to take those pictures and decide what we did and what we didn't want to carry on with us.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's ultimately important. Anybody I talked to really throughout most of my life, many people that do know me know that, not necessarily by choice, but I have been one to want to motivate and inspire others for as long as I can remember. And it's always been something that's been important to me when I talk to people about just relationships and family, because I'm so passionate about relationships and family, is knowing and defining what your household looks like for you, knowing what your marriage will look like for you, what your relationship will look like for you before you even get in one. Because once you've gotten into one, it's already too late. And not too late from the aspect of, oh, you're locked up, there's nothing you can do, but from the aspect of setting kind of the tone, having the conversation with yourself before anybody else to say, hey, listen, these are my deal breakers. This is what I can tolerate. These are things I can't tolerate. These are my deal breakers, and these are things that I'm willing to say, okay, well, I'm not changing my character or changing my personality to be accepting of these things. That's cool. And a lot of people, don't do those things, aren't as open and candid with those early conversations, and that's where down the road it's like, wait a minute, I thought I was marrying this person, and the other person's like, well, I never said I was this person, you just assumed I was this person. Mm-hmm. So it's important to get all those crucial conversations out early, and knowing what it is that you want in a spouse, whether you're planning on getting married, next week, next month, or years way down the line. Is something that you want to know, and that you want to know about the person that you're seeking. So kind of saying all that, fast forward a little bit, the important parts, how we met. So
there's a little bias to that.
It's a little bias. We'll see.
You believe one thing, I believe one thing.
We'll see.
We'll see where we land.
So when we first met, we had a class together, anatomy and physiology.
Tell them where, Ray. Tell them where.
At the illustrious Winston-Salem State University. Yes, absolutely. And we had class together, but she wasn't really paying me no attention. I think she had a boyfriend at the time or something. I had a girlfriend, and so
you did.
It was nothing more than that. We were classmates, and it was like, hey, I know you guys see you on the yard. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Kind of from afar, very informal. And so from there we knew each other, but never sparked any interest, desire, had any conversations to that degree. But skip forward a little bit. I remember being at my boy Sean's house. He was living in Winston at the time. This was after graduation. And for me, because I'm a little older, just a little bit. And I remember having a little Facebook conversation. I, started talking to her and asking what she was doing. She was at work. And I probably put like a little flirting or something. Nothing like heavy or anything like that.
Hey, sweetheart.
Yeah, hold on, don't put my business out there like that, man. Little tidbits.
We laying it all out. So he definitely oohed and ah and hey sweetie and hey sweetheart me. Got kind of reeled me on in there.
That's how you got to do, baby.
But that did, I would agree that did spark the flame, so to speak. Like you mentioned, we did know who each other was just by being on on campus, going to the same school, having class together. I think one thing, that was unique was that we were both from Charlotte, and that was something that happened on campus. You kind of gravitate to those that were from your city, whether you knew them before those college days or not. So that Facebook conversation, kind of lit the match a little bit. And I don't really think that I knew exactly I don't think either of us knew where it was going. I don't think there was really any intent for it to go any further than, just some flirting. It wasn't like, oh, let's right away, let's go out, let's do this, let's do that. But just that casual conversation, acknowledging each other, like you do.
Yeah, because I remember I got the phone number that it was a night. Don't judge me. Late night messaging. Anyway. And
I was at work. Like he said, I was at work because I worked third shift.
But she was entertaining the conversation. Either way.
I had some lunch breaks and stuff.
Dinner. What you mean lunch? But I did get the phone number that night. But the interesting thing is, even from our conversations and having a phone number, I think I had her phone number for months, and it took another meeting and conversations about phone numbers again before we even talked on the phone. I remember, it's crazy. I remember it was a Dub car show in Charlotte, and you remember that?
This is the part that I don't remember. He
Come
listens to me on this part every single time. I remember the Dub car shows. I know that I used to go to them. But I just don't remember seeing him there. But he says we connected.
Anyways, we connected at the Dub car show. And I remember once again, matter of fact, we still didn't talk on the phone then. I remember conversing with her. We kind of talked a little bit just about where we were in our lives. And it was like, hey, we got to talk sometime. Okay, yeah. We still didn't talk. It was months after that.
So we emphasize these things just to put it out there that it was never a love at first sight, so to speak. It wasn't like we immediately locked eyes and just was head over heels to the point where as soon as we met and talked, it just went up from there. It did take several different occasions for that match to stay lit. So
yeah, and even with that too, it's important because we all see these fairy tale movies and these shows and this, like, what's the show people watching now that start with a B? Bridgerton, whatever.
We don't know.
And everybody else, we don't watch it yet, but I hear people oohing and on over these like love type shows and things like that, and it's like some people get this fixation in their mind that, love at first sight and all, and one true love, and man, throw that stuff to the side. I'm just be honest with you. Love.
Don't throw it to the side.
Not
it's
completely.
True for some.
Not completely.
It can.
It can be true.
It can be.
It can be true. But
it can.
My point is, love overall ultimately is a choice. Even when people make a decision to fall out of love with someone, it's not like some magical thing that just disappears just as easily as it magically appeared for you. It doesn't just fall off. People make a decision to say, hey, listen, for whatever reason, whatever situation, scenario, and I'm not talking on the grand scheme of, somebody got abused, somebody got raped, things like that. But what I'm saying is, my desires have changed. I got older and I'm like, yeah, I just fell out of love with you. That absolutely not true. What happened was your priorities changed, and people kind of change. They change what's important to them, and when that person becomes less important and other things or other people in their life becomes more important, then the hierarchy kind of, that person that is your spouse does this and everything else in your life does this. So at that point in time, that's where the love kind of diminishes and goes off. But ultimately, it's based on a choice. And like you said, kind of giving all this background, like she said, because a lot of people that knew our story early on, it just seemed like It happened kind of quickly, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it seemed like it was just like, and then we were getting married. But you know, a lot of people didn't see the build up or even know about the build up because I mean, it really wasn't important at the time. But
back to
the yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're past the Dub Car show now. So we had a Dub Car show. I talked about talking again. We didn't have a conversation on the phone, and it wasn't until I had my my job at a nightclub here.
Don't be ashamed.
No, I ain't ashamed. I was working at 935, and yeah, it was an interesting time. It was a little part-time job.
Security.
As security, and I know, right? Security. Anyway, don't judge me. And this particular night, it's crazy, and some of it kind of seems a little fairy tale-ish because just how it flowed. At the time, typically I was working on the front. I was working the front line, you know, patting people down, holding the line, things like that. But this particular night, for whatever reason, I was manning the VIP. You know, if you've ever been a 9 through 5, you know, you go walk in, past the coat room, you go in to the right side. Anyway, it's not important. So I was on a VIP, and which rarely happened. And for whatever reason, it was time for me to get a break. So I was doing rounds and walking around, and happened to walk around the front of the club and see her and one of her best friends like walking away. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. You know, feel like I got some pull or something. Let me talk to them and see what's going on. And they were trying to charge too much at the door. And I talked to my doorman. I was like, hey, listen, these are my people. And I remember her coming in, you know.
And so, of course, anybody standing in line at a club and someone on staff recognizes you, yeah, you definitely gonna be like, yes, I know you, what's up? So
you saying you embellished?
Nah, I mean, like, I used that moment to my advantage to get on through that line, not have to pay, and get in the door.
So she got in the door, and this is where stuff gets a little hazy. Because, I mean, she claims she was watching me during the night and stuff like that. I don't believe that. Anyways, we did have a conversation and was like, you know, listen, we've been talking about conversing for a while, you know, maybe we should hang out. And I can't remember, I think this was on a Friday night, and she had to work the next day or something like that. So it was like the following weekend that we actually did finally connect and had our first date at Cheddar's.
In the university area.
Yeah, this was before.
We won't go there anymore.
Nah,
however, it was new. Mm-hmm. It was a spot.
Yep.
And
yep.
That's where we went.
That's where we went. Then we went to the boardwalk, walked on the lake, and had our first kiss.
That's what. You weren't supposed to tell them that.
I wasn't supposed to tell that part?
Not that part.
Oh, I ain't calling you. You wasn't no floozy.
You gotta tell them. You made me
I ain't gonna tell nobody else.
You made me lose what I was gonna say. That I was trying to say that's what young adults did back then, 2009. You don't really hear of young adults now saying, "Oh, we went out to a nice restaurant or to a casual restaurant because Cheddar's ain't nice, but
home style." And
then, going to spend time at the boardwalk.
But yeah, and the part, I mean, where it starts to kind of sound crazy, like I knew at that moment, like something kind of hit there, and I'm not going to call it love at first sight, but I call it kind of God let me know, hey, there's something here.
This was definitely one of those moments where I keep referring to the match lighting. So, as a match, you light it and sometimes the flame just immediately disappears and you light it again and the flame disappears. And that's what happened all those other encounters that we had. But it was that night at the club. And yeah, it was a little bit of the, that initial, okay, he got me into the club kind of feel. But the night at the club was a different night than the usual because it was a fight night. They were playing a pay-per-view fight. So it wasn't a lot of dancing going on. It was a lot of people, you know, just laid back, relaxing. And he acts like I was not staring at him, but I vividly remember, because if I didn't vividly remember, I don't think any of the rest would have happened. But watching him, watching his demeanor and his actions, and because I was there for the fight, but I probably really didn't know what was really going on. Let's just be honest. So, of course, I was, you know, scoping him out. And I wasn't mixing and mingling with all these other guys there because nobody was really dancing. It was just a real chill, laid back night. So that opportunity was definitely there for me to just kind of scoop out things that I like to do. So from that moment, that's where the match stayed lit. And, you know, yes, we did have our first kiss on our first date. But all the events after that confirmed that it was okay, that kiss was okay.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because after that first date, like, this was kind of a time where
This was in September
of
2009.
Yeah. And from that first date, like, I was kind of at a point in my life where before we had our first date where I said, you know what, God, like, I've been looking for so long. I've been looking pretty much for my entire life, you know, kind of cutting out some fun in my life, chasing after a wife. And I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, if you send somebody my way, you send them my way. But I'm just going to enjoy being single for a minute. And this was kind of like in the epitome of me enjoying, like, just being by myself, you know. So God kind of brought me to this point. You know, I might have done some things that God didn't agree with, but in the midst of all of it, you know, just the understanding and that kind of peace that I started to have of just being by myself, being, you know, it just being me and my relationship with God, I was like, I still wanted to be married. I still wanted a wife, but I wasn't chasing it like I had been doing. And I was enjoying it and enjoying being single. And once we had this first date, like, you know, I had a couple friends that I was, you know, conversing with and phone conversations and such. And I remember calling those people and saying, hey, listen, you know what? We can't converse no more. You know, I'm giving you the G-rated version basically with everything. It's not important. Anyway, say, hey, you know, we can't kick it no more. You know, this is kind of what I'm doing, and move forward. And before Sam and I had even had a conversation of us being a couple, you know, being boyfriend and girlfriend or putting any titles on anything, I felt the reassurance through this. I felt so much kind of just discernment saying, hey, this is what you need. Like, this is a component of your life. This is someone that you're moving forward with. And not knowing anything other than trusting the process, like, I made that decision. And I can say I don't regret that decision. And go ahead.
I was just gonna add in that this is where we were a little different when it comes to where we were in life. You know, as he mentioned before, like, this is something that he's kind of been after, you know, for years upon years. This is what he knew. For me, not so much. I knew that I wanted to be married. I knew that, of course, I wanted to be married to a really good man. And at that point in my life, which I had just graduated from college that year, you know, a couple months prior to that, I was not at that point in my life where I was seeking a relationship that I was determined to be married with that person. I was still in the dating to have fun kind of feel. I guess I could say that. Not necessarily dating. I dated with purpose, but I wasn't necessarily intentional with like checking off these boxes to see if this person was, husband worthy. Okay, you're not, so let's stop dating. It wasn't really, I'm gonna give you a little bit more time. And so like Josh was, casually talking to his friends. So was I. I was, in that same space, not in a necessarily committed, solid, relationship. So it wasn't hard to cut those ties. Even though I didn't go in with the intent that, okay, well, we're going to talk about marriage, like from first day. So things were a little bit different because headspace, I don't think that I was at the same level as he was, initially. It took us dating and, watching God do his thing, honestly, to get that revelation, to know that this was the relationship that was making everything else irrelevant.
Yeah. And, the crazy thing is, there's several crazy things, but I keep saying that. But, we started dating, consistently after this date. I can't remember quite consistent. I don't think it was every day, but it was
often.
It was often. It was maybe every few days or something like that. It was pretty often, to the point where I'm pretty sure, I think I had already met your family in the midst of all that before we decided to make anything kind of official between us. Not really on the aspect of, hey, this is Josh, my boyfriend, because we hadn't defined anything at this point, but it was, I don't know what she told them, honestly, but
I don't either. We might have to have an episode with them. We might
have an episode with them on there, just to see.
Nah, we're not gonna do that.
But it didn't take quite that long. I mean, it was about a month's time between there, because it was in October. We both remember October 16th when we decided, that we would make things official. And I remember, having a conversation with her, and I said, listen, not verbatim, because that was a little while ago, but pretty much I was like, listen, like, I'm not trying to do the whole boyfriend girlfriend thing, because that sounds like, it sounds child's play to me. Like, I want you to be my lady, and with that, in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking that, hey, this pursuit, like I have my entire life, is to make this person my wife, and, if any inclination would have come up in between that, then, I definitely would have had a conversation, say, hey, listen, stuff's just not working out, but, God just kept revealing things as I constantly prayed. And even before we started dating, and then once we made things official, if anything, it just made the praying even more, because I was having a conversation with God saying, hey, listen, this is what I want in a wife. And basically, I'm trusting you to do it. I'm not looking, because at this point, I didn't know all the attributes that Sam had. I know that I enjoyed her company, and I know that she was a good person, from what I understood. But, God just constantly kept reassuring me that this was the decision I was making. Even when I encountered people that knew her, kind of like mutual friends that we had that we didn't even know were mutual friends, kind of vouched for her character, which was like, oh, wow, like, this is legit. A couple life-changing events happened kind of early on that we were able to be a part of, kind of together. I can't remember if this was when we were engaged or before, but my grandfather had passed. She was able to meet him before he passed, and that was huge to me. Sam had a cousin that had passed very young, and that was a tough time, for her, the family, and, being able to be there during those moments and basically allowing God to use us to be those comforts during those times. I think that kind of helped too, just to see, hey, look, like, I got your back, and it wasn't something that was forced. It was just something we did naturally because we both enjoyed each other's company so much and it felt so natural. So it didn't feel like, I ever had to put on a mask or not be myself, whether it be around her or her family. Like, I love her family. Like, her family's always accepted me as a part of their family, as a son, and I mean, that aspect has never changed. So,
and it definitely was mutual. God was revealing himself to me through Josh on many, 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 many different, circumstances and times. It definitely brought me closer to God by watching this kind of unfold in my, in my life, because I wasn't far, but I wasn't as close to God as I needed to be. And so Josh being himself, he said it felt natural, and it definitely was very natural. Him being who he was, and allowing God to kind of be in charge. He did a lot of the praying and talking to God about our relationship in the beginning. And it took me a couple months to get to that level, because I wasn't there initially, but I saw the things that were happening, and it opened my eyes to be able to discern. And I had been through some crazy relationships and encounters with guys prior to that. So I felt like it was the first time that I was experiencing how a woman should be treated. And, I knew, from society, what people say you or should, people teach you and things like that, on what a man should do and things like that. I don't think that I can truly say that I experienced that prior to Josh. So it was very eye-opening, and it brought me closer to God. And I think I appreciated that way more than, anything, because I was able to pray more, and I was able to see things happen and make me pray harder. So
yeah. It's been an enjoyable ride. It's been an interesting ride, and like I mentioned earlier, a lot of kind of the initiation of our relationship, the pieces kind of happened seemingly fast. We're talking from our first date, September, October, we're kind of solidifying things. Hey, I want to be committed to you. And, from after that point, it seemed maybe, I don't know, even months or so after that, I'd say maybe at least 2 months. I didn't have a lot of time to play with, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But kind of started having those conversations early, because I kind of had this idea of what I wanted in a wife, what I wanted in a marriage relationship. And the more that I started to see these things kind of unfold, the more that I started to see, Sam's just genuine nature. And I mean, I just kind of cleared the elephant in the room, and I was like, hey, like, what are your thoughts on marriage, and opened it up about, how do you feel about us? And it seemed a little, I guess, premature to kind of ask that question. But I mean, it's okay to ask those questions in relationships. I think sometimes people get nervous to ask that because they don't want to chase a person away. But if God has somebody for you, then there's no question that you're going to ask that person that's going to chase them away. If anything, oh, go ahead.
And no, I'm just going to jump in and add, and there's no timetable to it. If you feel a certain way from the very beginning, and you know what you've experienced in the past prior to that person, so you can tell a lot about a person in those first couple months of, you know, being with them. They will reveal themselves quickly. And so people get hung up on these timetables and feel like, oh, we have to date for 6 months, or we have to talk for 6 months, and then we can move into being exclusive. There's no rule book to say that you have this timeline to be on. Now, on the flip side of that, this might be for another episode, but don't be foolish and be on that timeline for 5 years trying to still figure out that person.
Right.
But we'll save that.
But yeah, pretty much, you know, it's okay, like I said, to ask those questions. And anybody that respects you and respects your heart is going to be able to be open and answering those questions. Now, depending how deep of questions you're asking, when you start getting personal and therapeutic, then some of those questions might be a little too deep. You know, I mean, like therapy session, like questions that a therapist would ask. Some of those questions might be too deep to where that person may not be comfortable to open at that specific moment. But when we're talking general questions that are important for the scope of a relationship and longevity in a relationship, you know, such as questions about children, you know, marriage, you know, even religion, I mean, even maybe where you want to live, how you want to live, all those things are important. You know, you would be baffled if if we tallied up the amount of people that even got into marriages before ever, or even, let's say, engaged. Because from my personal opinions, by the time you've gotten engaged, that's already too late to start having conversations about children. Those conversations need to happen earlier in the relationship, because, I mean, at this point in time, you've invested time, you've invested money. If you went out and bought a ring, you might already start planning for a wedding. And now all of a sudden you're pressing these brakes abruptly because, like, wait a minute, you don't want to have kids? It's like, why did you not ask that question? Why did you not feel comfortable to ask that question? And there's no question that you can ask, you know, from day one to day whatever, you know, 5 years from then, that will make a person that is meant to stay with you on the basis of God. There's no question that's going to run that person away. So ask your questions because they're going to be important. And for us, because we were so open earlier on, I knew exactly what it was that she wanted. I knew she wanted to be married. And I waited a little bit because I felt like I already knew that Sam was going to be my wife. I would say pretty much I knew from December. So we started dating in September. October, we made it official. From December, I had already made up in my mind, but I was kind of waiting it out a little bit. I was like, hey, okay, I don't want to rush this thing. You know, I was still seeking God, still praying, hey, God, let me know. You know, and I remember...
You didn't want to scare me away.
I didn't want to scare away. But I do remember kind of one of the specific things I was praying for was like, hey, God, you know, if this is in your will, then basically you're gonna make these things happen. And at that point in time, you know, I wasn't anywhere near being wealthy. If anything, I was, you know, a brother just out here trying to make it. You know, I was I think I was a manager at Lowe's at the time, and I wasn't making a whole lot of money. And even thinking about, you know, engagement rings and kind of stressing all of that, I was like, God, you got to make this happen, because I don't know where it's gonna come from. I don't understand it. And moving from December to February, and you know, that's where I felt like, hey, it's time. February 26th, it's time. And yeah,
a good old normal day.
Yeah, I remember walking around with that ring in my pocket all day.
I mean, y'all, we had been out and about all day long at the bank.
Running errands.
Like, I don't know how he stayed sane throughout that day with that ring in his pocket. And I don't know how my nosy self didn't even realize that the ring was even in his pocket. But yeah.
It was tough, but you know, I remember from that, and I almost revealed it earlier. I remember we were in the elevator somewhere downtown. I think we were printing birth certificates, doing something, and random. And I remember telling her I was gonna take her to Olive Garden. I can't remember if it was something we planned. We were going to Olive Garden, or if I just sprung it. But we went to Olive Garden, and you know, I kind of briefed the waiter. You know, not that they were in on it, but it's just kind of that thing that once again you see in movies, you're like, yo, I gotta get everybody involved. Like, look, this is what I'm about to do.
And I missed that.
You know,
I totally missed that.
You were at the restroom.
Oh, that's why.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yep. I remember. I mean, I was nerves crazy. I'm palms sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Wait, that's Eminem. Sorry. I was nervous, but I knew this was right. You know, I wasn't nervous because I had doubts. I was just nervous because, you know, just this grand gesture, something I've been basically waiting on for so long to even get to this next step. And I remember I started breaking out. Don't ask me to sing, but I started breaking out in Jagged Edge, Let's Get Married. And by the time I had gotten to the end of the chorus, I was down on my knee with the ring out. And yeah, all I know is I forgot about them breadsticks and little Andy's mints. I don't remember much of the day after that.
No,
but...
not even. I remember just sitting there looking like, what is happening right now? Like, am I like dreaming? Or like, why are you singing, first of all? And then, okay, now your voice is shaking. And wait, what are you doing getting on the ground? Okay. Oh, this is what's happening. But yeah, it was beautiful. What I enjoyed the most was that it was not, it was genuine, and it was not this grand ordeal, you know, not knocking anybody's proposal by any means, but the genuineness that was put into it meant more than anything. You know, people probably will hear, oh my God, he proposed at Olive Garden. Like, it didn't matter. We could have been at Wendy's, and it still would have been just as important and meaningful to me, because it was genuine and it was pure, and I could see his heart on the table versus, you know, being at some big extravagant event and thinking like, how much money did he put into this, or like, you know, thinking of all those other things that are distractions when you really think about it. So it was a surreal moment, and you know, like I don't remember anything else after that either. I do remember that I was so shocked. They were like, do you want dessert? And I was like, no, I don't. I just want my ring. Let's go. Like, can we get the check? And can I go tell people now? And they was like, are you sure you don't want dessert? Because they wanted to write the cute little message on it. So even things like that didn't, you know, it would, looking back on it, it would have been a cute picture to have. But that type of thing just, it didn't go anywhere with me. I had what I needed at that, you know, at that moment. And it was rocking and rolling since then. Yeah.
And yeah, like, I don't even think we wasted a beat. Like, I think the planning phase, the wedding planning happened kind of almost immediate. It seemed like, I mean, as far as like knowing, hey, what date do we want, and you know, what colors and things. And I mean, I was involved probably more than most guys out there, just because when I tell you marriage has been on my brain for a long time. I've been dreaming about marriage since I was in preschool, and that's just the earliest I can remember. So yeah. So this was kind of it was a big deal to me,
and we wonder why our son talks about his wife now.
5-year-old, right? But even with that, kind of wrap this episode here too in a minute. But even with that, understanding that the weddings. A lot of times when you hear about weddings, you only see the one side of it, and it's the wedding. It's all about the wife and the woman, and it's not really about the man, and the man doesn't really care. I don't think a lot of guys. There's some guys that may not care. It's like, hey, listen, you pick whatever. Just tell me whatever the bill is, and I take care of that. But there are, some out there that are truly involved, and I petition any guy that is that's engaged, be involved in your process, because I mean it is both of your wedding, and I think that it's essential that the both of you do have inputs in your wedding, because I mean it makes you appreciate it more. It seems like something that's so subtle, even like the picking of colors and the photographer, the caterer, things like that. There may be things that you might not necessarily want to do or plan for, but those things that make, that help to capture those timeless moments when you look back on those pictures, they help to establish even that intimacy of, hey, this is our first thing that we did together in the future of our lives. Not something that, oh, well, this was a burden for me, and then you just kind of showed up and then we got married. So when you're looking back at the pictures, I mean, you're going to see two different things anyways, but your wife is looking back at the pictures in awe and crying because of all the emotions and all the time that was captured into this lifelong investment. And you're just kind of looking at like, okay,
Yeah, and you used that time doing it together made a world of difference. I mean, I guess I can say that I don't really know anything different, but just from listening to other people, people were very shocked. They was like, "Oh, Josh doing that? Oh, he got something to say about that?" Like, a lot of people were like, "My husband never," or "He didn't care," But those were intimate moments, and not only were they intimate moments, but you guys were still, we were still growing. Like, we were still learning each other. So those moments were times where we were learning each other. Like, literally, okay, well, what's your take on this cake? Oh, you don't like that kind of cake? Okay. Well, so now we're learning things about each other because we only been dating since October. And it is February, and here we are planning a wedding. So yes, we had to maximize that time with each other, and so there is a big emphasis on the fact that it's not just about the bride. It's definitely about the groom too. But doing it together, and women, you have to allow it, because not only does the man have to, put forth the effort, you have to allow him to. And that's where a lot of women, do not know how to allow that. For one, because they're not used to that being the story. And so they think that that's not how it's supposed to go. And then two, you just have the extreme bridezillas that just want to take control. But think about the future more so than that moment of the wedding, and think about the impact that you are having on each other's lives throughout that whole planning period, because you're planning but you're still dating. And so you can't forget that.
Yep. And I think we've talked about a lot of things about us and our the startings of us, Josh and Sam. Sam and Josh. Thosegriers. I think important thing to take away from all this, if you missed everything else that we said, is you can't put you can't put God in a box, period. And when it comes to trusting God and trusting His process, like everything that you think you know about anything, these lists that we generate, and, oh, well, this is, the person to a T, and I want somebody that's 6 foot tall, and I think some women talking, but 6 foot tall and dark and handsome, or I want a woman that's, oh, you feel me? Hey, now, hold on, wait a minute, now we still got to film. Or fellas, either one really, just being super, either materialistic or super objective to the point where you miss what God has for you. And not saying you have to settle. Sometimes people take settle, which means, oh, well, I didn't get everything to a specific T, and, he's missing a follicle on his side of his mustache, or,
God will give you the desires of your heart.
According to his will.
According to his will.
And once those things line up and you're being obedient to God and you're being diligent and seeking him and asking, and you're not, kind of running and chasing behind something just because it looks appealing, but the inside of it is rotten to the core, that's what's important. Ultimately trusting God. If you don't trust God and you don't believe in God, then this conversation is kind of irrelevant, really. It's all based on your belief system. But if you are someone who says, hey, listen, I believe God, I believe what he has to say, then trust him. Trust him with everything. Nothing is too big, nothing's too small. Even in the dating phase, if that's not the person that's for you, and that's not what you're looking to do, is just casually date someone, then say, hey, God, if this is not someone who you would have me to marry, then let me know. And then when those red flags come, make sure you pay attention to those red flags, because that's what happens when we truly settle, because this person has everything on my list, from the grand scheme of the facade of things. But when it comes to their core, their heart, their spirit, they're way out of whack inside. But I'm willing to settle and basically wed myself into damnation because everything else on my list is there. So definitely make sure that you're having those conversations early. If you're just in the dating phase, even if you're engaged and you haven't had those conversations, talk about kids, talk about your house, talk about where you want to live, talk about your religion, all of those things. And as these episodes go around about, we're starting to kind of build up from our journey. This session we talked about the beginnings, we talked about up to the engagement, and the next one we'll kind of build upon that. And definitely we'll start up early. Any questions that you all want us to answer specifically about us and our journey, you can hit us up, email us on Gmail. It's thosegriers@gmail.com. Try to make it simple for you. Once again, thosegriers, GRIERS. I'll put it below and should be in the description for the show and on this episode. But submit your questions, things you want to know about us, about our life, our journey.
Or even if you are at a point where you're kind of stuck on the biblical aspect, or you're stuck on whether or not you believe what God says about marriage. We are definitely open to that, because that's what this is all about.
Yep.
Doing things the right way. Later on throughout episodes, we will hit a lot of different areas, but foundation is key. And so if there's anyone that is struggling in those areas, definitely we are, open to those comments, questions, concerns, what have you.
And I'll open up even more than that, even if it's not about relationship. Honestly, if you're dealing with anything, ultimate passion is to motivate and inspire, and doing that, with God as my headship. So if you're struggling with something and you don't feel that you have anyone else to talk to, definitely, send those questions in there. If it's a prayer request, something you want us to pray for you, we're open and willing to pray for you. We're all here to be used by God, and that's what we want to epitomize. So either way, send those emails, questions that you have. We appreciate you all being a part of this journey with us. And
like, comment, share. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I know a lot of people don't like to log in, but it means so much more. Subscribe so that we do not feel like we missed someone. We forgot to tell them that we were getting on, or that we posted a new episode. So please, like, comment, and share with everyone. Share on your social media pages. I think when we post, it definitely will be unlocked so that you can share publicly and subscribe so that you know when we are posting our next episode. We probably won't do it the next time, but soon after, we will definitely be going live so that we can answer some live questions for love and adoption.
That's right. All right, well, once again, family, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Peace out.